Brijman sir, can you unmute please? Yes.
Yeah.
Sir, I invite you to give your okay, sir. Opening address.
Good evening, everyone. It is a privilege to share the platform with respected Ilaben, Mary Ellen, Jashir Ben, and Mr. Bhatt. Mary, a good time to thank you for helping Ananya when we needed it most. We are all ever grateful to WWB for helping Ananya at that time. Otherwise, it would not have survived. On Viji, we have always been partners. Time I met her was in 1989 when she accompanied Ilaben to IDBI for a very unusual request of lending 1.5 million rupees for on lending to poor groups. For us, it was a big surprise because a NGO lending, but anyway, because Ilaben was there, we accepted that thing. And looking back, I guess that was the base for starting microfinance, what it is today. So for that, that particular event of 11 and Viji coming and starting that sort of work is something which reminds me. On Viji, it has been a long partnership. After that, we did some work for WWB. There again, her role as a mother of microfinance was clearly visible. Somewhere in 2006, when we promoted Access, both we and me were, founder directors of Access Board. And what Access is today, the base was laid at that time. Likewise, somewhere in 2009, I was invited by Viji and Jashri Ben to join Ananya as chairman of the company. And we both stayed on the Ananya's board and management for almost 11 years till she left us last year. And it is such a long period. I have such, strong understanding of her personality, strong understanding of her. She was more an activist than a lender, and of course combined the role too. And her, commitment to women empowerment, rural, weak geographies, small institutions, and more importantly, fair microfinance. Every few months, few days, she will raise this concern that is microfinance fair now. So that was her very strong commitment to making sure that there is a genuine social enterprise in microfinance rather than a commercial enterprise. All put together, she contributed a lot in terms of building small enterprises, small institutions. Many of these startups have really grown into universal bank, small finance bank, very large NBFCs. And it was her motherly touch which really, helped this sector to come up to this level. We will remember her for all time to come for playing a motherly role in terms of building the sector, nurturing the sector, implanting social ethics in the sector. And this is the time I pay homage to her for really playing the motherly role of microfinance sector. Thank you, dear.
Thank you so much, sir, for setting the tone of the session and the commemorative lecture. Now I would request Mr. S.S. Bhatt to take the lecture forward.
Yeah, thank you, Radhika. Arya and Vipin for the excellent opportunity given to FWWE to partner with Access in hosting this program, which has audience across the world. In that way, it is a fitting tribute to Viji to spread her ideologies across the globe. I would like to thank Bridgmohan sir for setting the tone for this event, highlighting the role of Viji in the microfinance sector. I would like to welcome the guests for this important event. It is great to have respected Elaban Bhatt, founder Seva, and Mary Ellen, President and CEO of Women's World Banking in New York, Jayashree Bain and Bridgmohan sir in this program. I think Inclusive India Finance Summit, a distinguished summit which has gained a lot of importance over the years, is the right forum for showcasing the work of late Vijayalakshmi Das, fondly known as Viji, and to carry forward her legacy in the space of women empowerment, microfinance, livelihoods, and smallholder finance. We could not have had better persons than respected Elaban Bhatt to launch the book on Viji and give the inaugural address of Vijida's commemorative lecture, and Mary Ellen for giving the special address on women and finance to conclude the commemorative lecture. In between, as per the desire of Elaban ma'am and also Bridgmohan sir, we have a women entrepreneur, Gracemi Shimre from Socio-Economic Action Trust, seat from Manipur, speaking on her experiences and association with Viji and FWWB. Hearty welcome to all the distinguished dignitaries. Before we go for the commemorative lecture, we have one more profound task to perform. In order to document the contributions of Viji to the development sector, we have tried to compile the views of industry veterans, academicians, partners, associates, and the family members, and bring it in the form of a book so that it is a useful reference for the young leaders and the practitioners. Before I request the dignitaries to do the honors, I would like to express deep sense of appreciations and thanks to Prachi Gandhi, a sociologist, the facilitator and author of this book. And inspired by Viji's work, Prachi has started a foundation for helping the women in the last mile to bring them awareness on various aspects. I think Prachi will have all the success inspired by Viji. And Neha, my colleague in FWB, in her team, and Mr. Katan Bhai, the designer for putting the things together and bringing it in the form of a beautiful book. Thank the FWWB board and Chair Jayashree Bain for all the support. I also thank Elaban and Mary Ellen for consenting to launch the book and address the gathering and talk on a subject which was very close to the heart of Viji. I would like to quote some of the gist of the Viji's personality as written by the contributors. Viji was a most genuine, humane, and approachable human being, a true friend who would tirelessly bring the reality of poor women to investors, international organizations, government bodies, and anyone who had any influence to help them. A traveler, a spirited explorer with exceptional courage, who was always on the lookout of ways to empower women at the grassroots through economic activity and technical support, while putting the needs of the borrowers ahead of herself. Her commitment to rural women and small and marginal farmers was steadfast and unmatchable. Viji has most fondly been referred to as a Karmavir, one who performed the duty in a noble, heroic manner to a doyen of Indian microfinance, the iconic woman who lit the light of success to millions of women, a missionary with a zeal to improve the lives of poor women and to promote their direct participation in the economy through access to financial services. Viji will always be remembered as the one who laid the initial foundation for the growth of the microfinance sector in India, wherein she, with her colleagues, fought to have the rules changed so that banks could lend to SHGs as part of the priority lending portfolio. Much on Viji is available in this book, which will be made available shortly to all the public. May I request Honorable Ilaben Bhatt, the mother of Indian microfinance, who has started Microfinance India and founder of Seva, to release the book Viji fondly remember, the nurturer of Indian microfinance, and Mary Ellen, the doyen of Women Empowerment Program across the globe, and Mr. Bridgemohan, the sector expert, and Jayashree Ban, chair, to join the event of release of the book. May I now hand over the podium to respected Ela Ben and Mary Ellen and other dignitaries to release the book. Arya?
Yes, sir. We have shown the flip book, sir.
Yeah. I think.
Agree. Mr. Bhatt, we request you to
May I now
continue the
request
discussion.
Ela Ben to give her address? Ela Ben, ma'am.
Yeah. You hear me?
Yeah.
So today we are launching the book, and let me do it physically. Launch the book to the world of finance. I'm very happy to do this. But I cannot say I'm very happy. I feel sad at the same time, but I also feel really proud. Proud of my, I have two arms. One arm being Jayashree Vyas and the other arm being Vijaya Lakshmi. I never called her Viji. I gave her full name called Vijaya Lakshmi, and sometimes in joke I used to call her Nagar Lakshmi. So why Nagar Lakshmi? I'll soon tell you something. So with this launch of the book, I'm welcoming everybody from far, from near, and welcoming virtually. That is, of course, satisfying, but not fully. I can't shake hand with you. I can't hug you. Anyway, I have to give a lecture. Let me start. What I want to say, the title of my lecture that I have prepared is Banking on Women, Now and Tomorrow. So this is the faith that has been created by Viji to all of us. Secondly, virtual welcome to our city, Ahmedabad. You are all in Ahmedabad, our hometown. And our hometown where women have been engaged with women in finance since the beginning of 20th century. Ahmedabad was known as center of textile. There were over 100 textile mills in the city in the first decades of the 20th century. Textiles are no more now. Today, Ahmedabad, I would like to be called Ahmedabad as center of women's finance. Ambitious. Here is Jayashri Vyas, one arm of my banking in retail and running Seva Bank, reaching out to thousands of women each week. Here is Vijaya Lakshmi, my second arm, FWWB. She is in absentia, reaching out to hundreds of women's groups and federations and associations across India, serving as second tier of banking. And Mary Ellen, dear Mary Ellen Iskandaria, very, very interesting name, who is the president of WWB, Women's World Banking. WWB is also equally a favorite of me, like Seva Bank. WWB that is based in New York, far, and my dearest colleague and also my friend, close friend. I remember Michaela Walsh, Esther Oklu, Nancy Barry, Jennifer in Kenya. If you are listening to me, I say hello to you. All my best wishes. They are serving at the global level, spread across the region of the world, and reaching out to national entities of women's finance, and they are all like a family. All the three financial institutions are standing firmly, rising and spreading. And in addition, we have in Ahmedabad women's, perhaps only, a women's social insurance organization, which is called Vimo Seva. It's a cooperative. We have Ananya, women's wholesale finance company in India. We have women's microfinance training school, and more can be added. However, we are slow. Though slow in the eyes of our times of chasing growth at the cost of almost anything else, these women's finance institutions are steady in their growth. In economic terms, they are sustainable and helping poor women's families to be sustainable, reaching worldwide. And this women in finance connection is not new in Ahmedabad. That is why I refer to Ahmedabad, my city. It's not new. Historically, Ahmedabad Uh, Let me mention, historically, it builds, the women finance has went on building on the footsteps of Harkuarba Hachi Singh, who financed silk trade in China in those days. It builds on the Mughal Empress Noor Jahan, who financed and owned shipping trade from Cambay, it's a port, to Europe, all the way to Europe. And Harkuarba was also a, a partner to that. So I take Ahmedabad uh, as the center of women's finance. And yet, the life is full of paradoxes. Many of them bring pain and shame as well. How can we otherwise explain to us the recent largest and longest march of millions of migrants in India? They're hardworking, honest workers. India's demographic dividends due to this during this lockdown. Walking back home, these migrants, walking back home, empty stomach, empty pocket, without due wages, without any health support, measures or any contingency advance, and any future ahead. They had access to no saving or credit, investment, advance, relief, or compensation to mitigate their unprecedented misery of loss of job and a future both. On the other hand, our cities, our cities called the citadels of culture and engines of economic growth and buoyant banking and melting pots of social hierarchies. These cities, they just silently looked away. To them, we close our doors to residential areas, industrial sites, beaming banks, and business districts. Authorities looked away as the march happened. Maybe the $1 trillion economy decided to let hurt its own workforce. Can't believe. Let me say, had more finance be in the hands of more women, this situation of migrants, poor migrants, would not have surfaced. I believe that. No doubt. As an economy and also as a society or as a culture, we collectively consented to this bloodless but acute violence on to our own working majority in India. And such violence with social consent of the society is happening all the time. It's not new. Poverty is violence with consent of the society. We continue to keep our poor without basic primary needs like roti kapda makan, as well as pure air, clean air, or fertile land. But when women have access to finance, money goes into these primary needs and poverty recedes. Our own experience, that I say. Another paradox is that we have left economy to the economists, culture to the culturists, and finance to finance managers. They can help a great deal, of course, but our banks and financial institutions and economy must be owned and shaped by those whose daily economic acts of producing, consuming, trading, investing, financing, and banking, they shape the economy. Otherwise, it is unjust governance of our economy, our banks, and our finance system. The balance is now in favor of large economic and finance organizations. Thinkers, finance, thinkers, analysts, teachers, policymakers, budget allocators, investment deciders at the macro level, and not in favor of those who make the economy run, the millions of women whose economic activities make banking and financing work. The economic benefits in terms of food, clothing, shelter to the working poor are diminishing. You see that. We finance shopping malls, but not the street vendors. We finance dams, but not the running water for the homes in slums. Metro rails, but not the three-wheelers. New economic zones, but not the basic shelter of the poor. Let the balance move from the elite macro ideas to day-to-day normal economic activities and decisions of the women workers and small local businesses run by women. Their food, clothing, shelter related production, consumption, ownership needs to be financed. Needs to be financed uh, so that they move bottom up to surge the economy of the world. Let us put our goal for most financing to move the poorest, what is called first family, poorest family's income rise, I say 6% to 10%, and add up to 10% GDP of our country. Let the finance cause economic growth at the household level first and not necessarily at the sector or macro level. This is what I understand from my experience. Please do not get me wrong. I am not against paradox. I do understand that often paradoxes are potent. And some of the potency we do have realized. My experience with Seva Cooperative Bank, Seva Cooperative Federation, Friends of Women's World Banking, WWB, then WIGO, that is Women in Informal Employment, Globalizing and Organizing. So locally and internationally, it confirms it to me, and let me mention a few. Building a cooperative bank of poor, illiterate women, distributing dividend every year without fail is an example of using potency of the paradox of a bank of poor. Running a trade union of informal sector workers is another paradox. Resolved. Retail marketing, Rudy, where the rural producers are traders, are managers, are consumers, is another example. Running academy of illiterate and semi-literate women, learning the basics of organizing, cooperatives, and leadership is one more example. I have confidence in women when it is local, work, nurturance, and peace. Peace. That is the goal. Here, women are natural leaders, as Gandhiji said. And when finance or banking are run by women, more and more potency of the paradox of our economy blooms. Perhaps It is possible to have micro without macro. But surely it is not possible to have macro without micro. This is so sure for finance and banking. But let us not divide the reality. However, macro changes must have micro project, micro impact, while micro changes must add up to shape the macro change. Global banking must reach out to local banking of women, and local banking of women must add up to shape the global banks. This is possible. If so, then why does the world gets lost into macro, meaning top-down economic and finance policy making that we see in our development banking today? It is painful to see that the huge, very huge finance has flowed to destruction, even to self-destruction, financing large carbon footprint of goods and services, enormous water footprint of monoculture crops, for example, is indeed a path to destruction. Financing a digitalization without arrangements for taking care of digital waste, real and virtual, is a path to destruction. Finance, financial services should be flowing to nurturing our daily life, mainly food and health, ensuring our soil that nurtures the earth, that nurtures all living beings. The finance must support development of the human mind and nurtures the knowledge and suitable technology. We need nurturing investments that nurture our next generation as much as that of birds, beasts, and trees. We need nurturing investments in women's activities that clean air and water, that green villages and cities, and sustain us all. Let us encourage community ownership of assets as much as building private assets. Given a fair chance, the spirit of cooperation is just as likely to lead us to profits as a dose of healthy competition. The present banking sector needs to realize that low income households need to enhance their incomes, not cash flow smothering. Let us invest in skills, productive assets, in working capital of the poor and women, where it has most impact. Hopefully, the regulations will help us, FWWB, and others in supporting innovative financial services. The path to future I would head with Viji and FWWB is that of nurturance. I mean, if someone had not nurtured us in our infancy and childhood, we would not have been here. Women, dear sisters and brothers, we must develop our path to nurturance. Banking most support the path of nurturance, and friends of women and banking must invest mind and money in this path of nurturance worldwide. I do bank on women in general when it comes to finding a solution to any crisis. I have great faith in women. Lastly, the pandemic lesson learned, as I understand, is that together we form this world. Our relationships nourish us all, you, me, people, and the nature. We are under one sky. We breathe a common air. We draw water from a common ground. We eat the produce of the same earth that sustains us all living beings. Let us acknowledge this bond, what I call Anubandh, bond between us and the world, building an economy of nurturance. Thank you all. Thank you, Nagar Shakti, that gave us this opportunity to meet and talk about future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ila Ben, for such an illustrious address, giving the path for the future. I think the need for supporting the micro to bring the changes in macro with futuristic ideas has been given by respected Ila Ben. I think it is all our responsibility, those who are in the field, to practice, to bring changes in the micro level. And the path of the future is nurturance. Unless we nurture our future generation, our climate, our surroundings, we will not have any future. That is the guidance given by respected Ila Ben. I think we thank you very much from the bottom of our heart for giving your time in addressing such a large gathering across the globe. Thank you, Ila Ben, for that. May I now bring in a woman entrepreneur from the eastern part of India, from Manipur. She is a entrepreneur supported by FWWB, and she would like to share the experiences of working with FWWB and Viji and how she has developed. May I now request Arya to play the video of the women entrepreneur?
Hi, my name is Gresmi K. Shimray. I was working outside my home state for many years in industry and in hospitality, and always had a dream that to own and manage my own business in my native town. Hence, I started saving like whatever I could manage, and after that I got married and settled down in my hometown, and the dream which I had before started to materialize, and I opened my small grocery shop in 2016 with the little saving which I had accumulated over the years and some financial support for my families and friends. And the challenge while starting and running the business was never easy right from the initial days, and I had faced a lot of challenge like inadequate finance, like lack of capital. Lack of capital is the major roadblock for my business, for running business and to start and later to scale up. First competition, facing tough competition from other grocery shop, which exposed the one biggest challenge for survival. And time of management is also a big challenge for me, as I had to manage all the household and some other social responsibilities along with my business. And marketing strategy, the lacking skills in product and service for reaching out to maximum clients and receive optimum output, and in availability of raw materials due to poor transportation service could not cater to demand of clients, and due to lack of raw material supply. Demand and supply gap, like most of the time we could not supply the goods on time as per demand. Type of support I have been while facing all these challenges, I've came across FWWB through SEED, and where I have received a loan support from microcredit loan for income generating activities in an amount of 50,000 from SEED, and had also received an amount of 1 lakh from FWWB for income generation. And capacity building support, I have attended the financial education on financial education, business management. There's livelihood skills training on bakery under the School of Entrepreneurship Development of FWWB, which organized by SIT. After I had attended the training on education, financial education, I've learned a lot, like a basic knowledge in running business, like maintaining record, and in terms of sales, both cash and credit, and like maintaining budget, all the expense, incomes, and inventories. And actually, before COVID-19, FWWB officials has to visit like at least once in a month, and they have been very supportive and used to provide me technical and moral support in running my business. And actually, especially Viji ma'am, whenever she visited to Ukrul, she did visit my shop and would always appreciate and encourage me what in and what I was doing. And the team of FWWB has become a family now, and overall I extremely satisfied and happy with all the financial support and building capacity support FWWB providing. And I wish them all the very, very best in their future endeavor. And my future plan, through my hard work along with the hand holding and continued support from FWWB, and I'm able to establish and to run my business very well. In fact, along with the grocery shop, I have also diversified and introduced mobile recharging facilities and bakery items and much more. And presently, which I operating my shop is a bit crowded place. And in the near future, I want to expand my shop and open a new bakery shop so that I could reach out more clients and also provide employment opportunities to women in my community. And I hope that one day I will achieve all this. Thank you.
Thank you, Gracimi, for giving such an inspiring thought to the millions of women entrepreneurs who would like to come out of the house and start their small enterprises and small businesses. Thank you very much for that. May I now turn to Mrs. Mary Ellen, President and CEO of Women's World Banking New York. As I mentioned, she is a doyen of women economic empowerment across the globe, more especially in the eastern part and also the southern part, in providing the required knowledge, the support systems, and also encouraging the women to see what is their future, how should they come out and lead their life. May I request Mary Ellen to take over and give the special address? Over to Mary Ellen.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bhatt. I don't think I've ever been called a doyen before, so I'm very honored by that new title. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mary Ellen Iskandarian, the President and CEO of Women's World Banking. And I first want to thank Access and the other organizers for inviting me to deliver this first Vijayalakshmi Das Memorial Lecture on Women and Finance. It's an address that has great personal meaning for me and for the organization I lead. I am deeply touched and humbled to be following Ila Ben's remarks, but I still thought it might be fitting if I start with a few words about Viji herself, because Viji's work and all of us who she has inspired continue to be at the center of the story of women's economic empowerment around the world. As many people have said here today already, Viji was a great friend of Women's World Banking and of low-income women everywhere. And I'm also very proud to call her my friend. Throughout her life, she was a strong, clear, and brave voice for women's empowerment at a time when it was hard and maybe even sometimes dangerous for such views to be expressed. I don't think it's an overstatement at all to say that Indian microfinance exists because of the vision of Viji Das, and Brij Mohan supported that for us in his remarks earlier. Through Friends of Women's World Banking, an institution that Viji led since 1989, and then later Ananya, which Viji founded in 2009, hundreds of financial institutions in India received the financing and technical assistance they needed to serve millions of low-income women. She was frequently the first lender willing to take a chance on newly created microfinance institutions, including our own network member, Ujjivan. Viji's financial and technical support enabled those organizations to have an even greater impact on the lives not only of their women customers, but on those women's children and their wider communities as well. But the impact of Viji's life and work extended far beyond India. Thanks to her willingness to share her vision with others around the world, including through the Women's World Banking Network, women everywhere truly owe her a debt of gratitude for her courage and determination in promoting greater access to financial services for women, many of whom were among the most poor and most isolated in their societies. Now, Viji's hard work is an indelible part of our memories of her, but I would be remiss in not also telling you just how much fun she was. She had a wonderful, sly sense of humor. She took unmitigated delight in sharing photos and telling stories about her children and her grandchildren. And she had a truly uncanny ability, even under very stressful or uncertain situations, to make you feel immediately at home and among friends and family. Viji was taken from us far too soon, but I can assure you that her memory drives all of us at Women's World Banking to work even harder for equality so that maybe, just maybe, we can come close to matching her energy, her passion, her creativity, and her humanity. I wonder if we could put up that first slide. Actually, why don't we advance to the third slide? We've got on Women's World Banking. One more. Thank you. While Viji and her legacy will be known to many of you, Women's World Banking, the organization of which she was such a great supporter, may not be. So please allow me to spend a little time talking about our role. For more than 40 years, Women's World Banking has advocated for the financial security, prosperity, and economic empowerment of women by driving action and investments in financial inclusion. We partner with governments to enhance national policies that promote women's financial inclusion, and with financial service providers to develop and deploy innovative, sustainable, and scalable financial solutions that meet women's needs. We also invest directly in financial service providers like Ujjivan and Ananya to influence these organizations to better serve women as leaders, as employees, and as customers. And we do this because women still participate unequally in economies across the globe. Women are less likely to participate in the labor force than men. If they are employed, it is often in the informal sector or in vulnerable jobs. Women are paid less than men. They bear a disproportionate responsibility for unpaid care and household work, and they are less likely to have social and legal protections. Women are less likely to have access to financial services, and female entrepreneurs face many more disadvantages than men do in starting a business or receiving the funding to grow. Women are constrained from achieving the highest leadership positions within our organizations and institutions. But with all of that said, let me emphasize, women are not victims. When women are given the tools to participate equally to men, they are an economic force to be reckoned with. Women's full participation is going to be vital to our growth and recovery from this pandemic. By reaching economic gender equality, 13 trillion with a T dollars could be added to global GDP by 2030. Right now, with the prospect of a lost decade of growth, the world can simply no longer afford inequality. So to draw your attention to this slide, Women's World Banking has been active in India since our founding in 1979, initially through our partnership with Ilaben at Sewa Bank and with Viji at Friends of Women's World Banking. Since those first two partnerships, we've grown in India to be a diverse network of public and private sector banks, non-bank financial companies, NGOs, and fintechs, all working to serve low-income women and contributing to the cross-pollination of learning and collaboration across geographies. I'm particularly thrilled to tell you that in the last 2 years, we've also made serious investments in building a physical presence here in India. The Women's World Banking India team, under the leadership of Sriram Jagannathan, has been working with our network partners and other Indian financial institutions to better understand Indian women's specific needs and the challenges they face in financial inclusion. And then our aim is to make all of the findings from these various discussions available to the broader industry and scale them to include millions more women in the formal financial system. Lastly, I'd like to make a plug for one of Women's World Banking's most important programs and one which was really near and dear to Viji's heart. She knew that because financial institutions with gender diverse leadership teams not only have superior financial results, but are also more likely to serve women clients well, we offer a variety of leadership and diversity training programs. Since 2007, 95 leaders representing 23 Indian financial service providers have attended our programs. 2 years ago, we expanded this training to include a program that's tailored specifically to policymakers and regulators. We offer this program in partnership with Oxford University and have welcomed central bankers, insurance commissioners, planning and finance ministry officials from around the world. But so far, I'm sorry to report that no Indian regulators or policy officials have joined us, which is really a shame, given India's leadership in digital financial inclusion and how much they could share with the other members of the class. But we're recruiting for the 2021 class now. So if you fall into that category, please apply through the leadership and diversity section of our website at womensworldbanking.org. Could you go to the next slide, please? So this talk was specifically supposed to be around women and finance and the barriers and opportunities that COVID-19 has put up for women's economic empowerment. So I'm happy to say that today, more than at any other time, Women's World Banking's work carries huge significance in India and around the world. According to UN Women, the pandemic will push 96 million people into extreme poverty, 47 million of whom are women and girls. And it's not just low-income communities who are at risk now. Various reports highlight a worrying trend that even middle-income countries are at risk of falling back into extreme poverty. An estimated 11 million girls may leave school by the end of the pandemic. And as we know from previous crises, they're very unlikely to return. Women are shouldering the extra burdens of family care, facing intimate partner violence at tremendous rates and are losing their jobs at a disproportionate rate as well. Women came into the pandemic facing a combination of economic barriers, which leave them less likely to have the financial tools they need, such as savings, insurance, digital financial services, and access to credit to manage in this economic downturn. In both the short and long term, women's economic exclusion will slow our recovery globally. Women-owned micro and small and medium-sized enterprises are likely to service local communities or to be in sectors like catering and tourism that have been particularly hard hit by lockdowns and other COVID-related restrictions. And since most women-owned MSMEs operate in the informal sector, they're virtually invisible for the purposes of government support programs. Even before COVID, women-owned businesses struggled to get the financing they need to grow. The unmet credit need for women entrepreneurs globally is $1.7 trillion. And unfortunately, this story of unequal access continues when it comes to financial services delivered through technology, and the mobile internet gap here in India is one of the largest in the world, with only 16% of women owning smartphones. And as we all know today, mobile internet access is vital for running a business, transferring money, and connecting with both clients and suppliers, as well as with the broader community. Now, as stark as those figures sound, I remain optimistic. And believe it or not, I think COVID offers the world an unprecedented opportunity to accelerate financial inclusion. If you believe, as I do, in that old saying of don't let a good crisis go to waste, then now is a time for hope and for action in furthering the goals of women's financial inclusion. In response to the pandemic, India, along with 156 other governments around the world, adapted or implemented a social benefits program to provide relief payments to their citizens in need. But what made India's program stand out was that your social benefits program was deliberately targeted to women. Apart from being timely and much needed support for families that were hardest hit by the economic effects of the pandemic, these payments delivered to a bank account digitally provided a gateway for women to join the formal financial system. As a result of these Indian government transfers, 25 million new PMJDY accounts were opened to receive these subsidies. These new bank accounts, along with the remaining 176 million poor women who do not yet own PMJDY accounts, represent a huge opportunity to deepen financial inclusion in India. And India can provide a role model for the rest of the world to show just how it's done. With the Jan Dhan accounts, there is a real opportunity to encourage a culture of savings that will protect women and their families from the next economic shock. COVID-19 has also accelerated the use of digital financial services around the world. We strongly believe this trend and the emergence of a growing, but still small, fintech community that really understands women clients will deliver more relevant financial services to women via digital channels. But we must continue to close the technology gap and get more phones into the hands of women. And this in turn leads to a third area of opportunity, social commerce. Increasingly, women entrepreneurs are using social media platforms as storefronts for their businesses and for transacting with clients via those platforms. Our research in India and in Indonesia found that there are opportunities to reach women through these platforms to deliver financial services. India's social commerce sector is poised to grow to twice its current size, all the way to $70 billion within the next 10 years. And this growth will be fueled by resellers who are primarily first-time entrepreneurs and predominantly women who wish to supplement their household income. So these three trends that we're seeing coming out of COVID-19 give us optimism if and only if we're diligent in following them through. In closing, I'd like to give you a quick case study of just how Women's World Banking is working here in India, this time with Bank of Baroda, to put this crisis to good use by capitalizing on the Indian government's timely distribution of social benefits payments to women. Can I have the next slide, please? So earlier, I alluded to the fact that India was one of the few countries around the world targeting their social benefits payments to women specifically. They managed to reach more than 200 million women during the early COVID pandemic in this way. And India was able to respond so effectively because of the financial infrastructure that had been built ahead of time. As you know, India is unique in combining its Aadhaar identification capability with the Jan Dhan basic savings account. This combination covers 420 million people, which goes far beyond most other emerging markets' banking penetration at the base of the pyramid. We've been working with Bank of Baroda, one of the largest public sector banks in India, for the last 18 months, and have been able to see firsthand how this powerful combination can be leveraged to build economic resilience for households at scale. And it is our belief that women in particular and households in general can be transformed by focusing on improving their engagement with the Jan Dhan account. We designed a simple 3-point solution to address this opportunity. First, we designed a product that was a savings solution that we call the Jan Dhan Plus account, which invites all customers to save small amounts regularly and be rewarded as a Jan Dhan Plus customer and receive a guaranteed 5,000 rupee overdraft line. Secondly, we designed a very relevant channel. We trained and retrained banking agents so they could function as relationship managers to explain this new package to customers and invite their participation. And then very importantly, we combined heightened awareness and behavioral nudges. We created communication material as well as a series of nudges to remind women to deposit small amounts. May I have the next slide, please? So if we go from left to right, we'll see that we discovered that more than 70% of Bank of Baroda's customers save small amounts, but they do so regularly, but in informal ways outside of the bank. In customer interviews, we heard that they don't feel that banks welcome them. They don't feel that banks understand their needs, and they don't understand how to engage with banks. They do, however, trust government banks, and they are willing to save with them if they're invited to do so. We also found that banking agents are absolutely key for engaging customers with these services. In the middle of the slide, we see that our small savings scheme resonated with both low-income women and men, as it was linked to the reward of the 5,000 rupee overdraft line. Even during the height of the pandemic last year, 32% of low-income women who walked into a banking correspondent location signed up to become Jan Dhan Plus customers. The promise of getting that overdraft credit line worked as a powerful incentive to sustain women's savings behavior, resulting in 18% of those women who signed up completing the 4 required transactions during that short pilot period despite the impact of COVID. We estimate that in a non-COVID steady state environment, 75% of the women who signed up would have been able to complete those deposits. And then the third block of this slide, we see that women agents are more relationship driven, and they've provided 3 times the value to the bank as their male counterparts. They were responsible for larger average transactions. They were more able to convince more John Donne customers to both sign up in the first place, and then were more effective in cross-selling. And this was with both male, less than 10% of the overall agent base. And that's really paradoxical because even 50% of the John Donne account holders are women. May I have the last slide, please? Or the next slide. So we're very excited about the findings from this pilot because it suggests to us that women will save with a bank if the conditions are right for them. And while COVID has undoubtedly impacted this segment's ability to save significantly in the short term, it has served to remind people of the importance of building their economic resilience through savings. The power of regular small savings to help build a cushion is underscored by this John Donne Plus scheme, and it resonates very well with India's agenda of a self-reliant India. I'm happy to say we are in discussions with the bank to see if we can scale nationally, and we're speaking with other Indian public sector banks to replicate this proposition with their customer base as well. Based on what we've found, we estimate that public sector banks supported by the government of India could reach more than 50 million low-income women with this solution. We can also nearly double John Donne deposits, increase access to credit for families of low-income women, expand their digital capabilities, and this is the part I'm most excited about, develop a workforce of women banking agents across India. Wouldn't that be a legacy that Viji Das could look down from wherever she is and smile upon? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary Ellen, for such an informative, illustrious, and also educative address. I think definitely Viji would be happy wherever she is, hearing you and Elaban speaking on the future of women, and also you highlighting the role of women in Indian development, the role of Indian women in the development sector, and also that women are capable to save if conducive environment is there. I think it's a lesson for all of us to see that we provide conducive environment for the women to save and make them economically sustainable and viable entrepreneurs in this world. I think your address on the COVID pandemic and how to convert that into an opportunity is an eye-opener for many of the women entrepreneurs, which would definitely be helpful in shaping their business in future. I thank you very much for such the illustrious address. May I now request Jayashree Ban to speak 2 words to conclude the session. Jayashree Ban.
First of all, I will thank Access IFI Summit for arranging this kind of session. I, of course, thank Dimohan sir, Bhatt sir, Elaban, and Mary Ellen, and for talking about Viji. To be very frank with you, nobody thought it, but I never even know that this will be the time when we will have a launch of book of Viji, because from the beginning, if you remember, from the first summit, Access Summit till last Access Summit, Viji was always in the summit, and I was also with her. So I'm feeling so very bad that I'm not. I mean, she is not here, but I'm very happy that Ilaban and everybody who has talked about Viji's work and now Viji's future. That is something which is really will be very helpful, and will ensure that whatever Viji has done, we will add value to all this work. And thank you very much again for everybody in the audience also. Of course, I'm not able to see anybody, but that you came here and stayed and heard what we were saying. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. May I now hand over to Arya and Vipin?
Yeah. So I'm really glad that the last session, and for me, the most important session of the 2-day summit, was that we all collected to remember Viji. And I always think that she was among the tallest leaders of the microfinance sector, of the inclusive finance sector, and her contribution, as Mr. Brijmohan, Ila Ben, Jeshi Ben, Mary, all talked about her. She was an incredible person, and we are all here together, missing and talking about Viji as the session went on. Thank you very much, everybody. And just to keep memories of Viji alive, we would like to do something each year, whether we do it as a part of the Inclusive Finance India Awards or we keep a special lecture. But Viji was so special to all of us and to the sector that it's very critical and very important that we keep Viji's vision, Viji's sense of humor, and everything to remember. And for me, a very, very special thanks to Ila Ben, who delivered such a wonderful, emotional keynote address with a lot of vision about what we can all do, being micro and still influence the macro. So thank you very much, everybody. For us, it's now about 8:30 in the evening. And Mary, we have to get you over to India next year. I already told you about the dates, but I'm going to confirm those in the next maybe a week or so. But very happy for the 2 days of the Inclusive Finance India Summit to end with remembering Viji. So I'm really happy and my team's really happy, and thank you all very much.